what happened was whenever the phone rang, they would yell, "Liz, phone." And I thought, oh my God, I got my MBA and now I'm the receptionist. And then I went to my boss and I said, I finished all my work because I was going in at 7, staying till midnight, thinking that would show them that I was not the assistant. And he said, oh, well, you could go around to the guys and ask them what supplies they need. And then go into the supply closet and see what else we need. The point is, of course, I realized then that environment wasn't for me. And it so happened that the industry was also not for me. But yes, when they ask you to do those things, as you just said, don't make the coffee, don't take the notes, show them the value you can add. And then if they're not valuing you, move on.
Hi, Money Movers. I cannot express to you how excited and thrilled I am for today's episode. A few months ago, I was invited by UBS to attend a women's forum called Own Your Worth. And there was a keynote speaker who really moved me. She has such an inspiring story. She is an entrepreneur. She is a philanthropist. She has a foundation that she started called Elizabeth Elting Foundation. She's a mother. She's a feminist. And she is a best-selling author of Dream Big and Win, translating passion into purpose and creating $1 billion business. And as you know, my company is called Dream Big Ventures. So it was like, it's the universe. This is meant to be. And this woman's story resonated with me so much. And here we are today with Liz Elting.
Oh, thank you so much, Stacey. That was beautiful. And yes, we are soul sisters. Here we are. We're proponents of dreaming big. And yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
This was actually a book of the month as well for Dream Big. So for our audience and her money movers. And who better to learn it from than an expert like yourself? I know that you started off at NYU and started the business out of your dorm room after graduation. Can you share with us, what were your beginnings and your origin story? How did you start TransPerfect?
By the time I had graduated from high school, I was 17 and I had studied 4 languages and knew languages were my passion. But never thought I would do anything with them because what on earth do you do with languages other than teach? And I was interested in business. I knew that early on because another thing that happened from my growing up is even though we were in a fortunate position where my family could pay for things, my parents encouraged me to work and to be self-sufficient. Then when I did go to college, I loved languages still, didn't know what on earth I would do with them, but realized I could major in them. So I thought, actually, what happened was I called my dad again and I said, Dad, I have to decide what I'm going to major in by tomorrow morning. I have to declare my major, love languages, but I don't know what I'm going to do with them. And he said, don't worry, just pursue your passion and the rest will take care of itself. And so I did. I followed his advice. Okay, so graduated from college after doing my junior year in Spain, where I fell in love with Spanish. And that became my favorite language. And Spain became my favorite place. And then after college, worked in Venezuela. So at that point, lots of wonderful international experience. New languages were my passion. And then when I came back to New York at age 21, I was fortunate enough to find an opportunity working at a translation company. This was in 1987, before there was a lot of translation going on. Or so I thought. So this company was incredibly valuable to me. I started in production, was able to move over to sales. And during that time, I really learned the industry. And I learned that I loved the industry. But I saw a gap between what clients needed and what was available in the industry as far as service and quality and a number of other things. Ended up going back to school, got my MBA from NYU, and again, went through, what do I major in? And I thought, wow, well, I was in the translation industry. It doesn't really pay that well. And, I need to be more practical. So I majored in finance. And what was interesting about that is finance was not my passion, but I thought it was secure, thought it was a good place to be, and then combined it with international business. The bottom line is I tried out finance very briefly. I got a job doing equity arbitrage for the proprietary trading division of a French bank. Did this right after NYU, but realized after only 4 weeks that I was miserable.
Mm.
And I was miserable for two reasons. One is there was kind of blatant sexism going on in the office. This was in the early 90s. I was the only woman in an all male financial
Let me
department.
tell you, some things haven't changed.
Something I
You know, I'm
know.
sure there's a lot of people that are women who are feeling suffocated and they're in very toxic environments in their companies.
Right. And for them, I will just wrap this up as far as what I'm saying. But yes, after only 4 weeks,
Wow.
I thought I made a huge mistake. I knew I loved the translation industry. I did think it could be done better, but my MBA, how am I going to quit? My parents just largely paid for my MBA.
Hmm.
But I just thought, I cannot go through life this way. I mean, first of all, dealing with the sexism, but also I didn't want another job in finance. It was not for me. It was very dry, a lot of inputting numbers into spreadsheets. It was doing equity arbitrage. So after only 4 weeks, I said to my boss, I'm so sorry. I made a huge mistake. How much time do you need? I want to resign. And he said, Liz, 2 weeks is fine. So I stayed another 2 weeks. And after 6 weeks, I quit and started TransPerfect out of an NYU business school dorm room. And that's what
Yes.
led to it. But that's why it wasn't, what should I do? It was more that the whole love for languages and international business was there and evolved over the years.
Yes, I remember reading that chapter and how instead of valuing you for your expertise in your financial MBA from NYU, they had you answering phones and, and ordering office supplies, and it's so
That's
ridiculous.
right.
So I just want to share with our money movers. I always tell them, do not take the notes. Remember, that you are an expert and you have your degree. So don't let anyone devalue that. You actually have a lot to contribute. Don't be shy about putting your hand up for things, that you qualify for. Don't be shy in asking for what you want and going for it, right?
You remember it well, Stacy. Literally, I went in there and I thought, okay, I'm going to do equity arbitrage and I have my MBA. This is exciting. Showed up, only woman there. And then, as I said in my book, what happened was whenever the phone rang, they would yell, Liz, phone. And I thought, oh my God, I got my MBA and now I'm the receptionist. And then I went to my boss and I said, I finished all my work because I was going in at 7, staying till midnight, thinking that would show them that I was not the assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, oh, well, you could go around to the guys and ask them what supplies they need. And then go in the supply closet and see what else we need. The point is, of course, I realized then that environment wasn't for me. And it so happened that the industry was also not for me. But yes, when they ask you to do those things, as you just said, don't make the coffee, don't take the notes,
Mm-hmm.
show them the value you can add. And then if they're not valuing you, move on,
Exactly.
go elsewhere.
Yes.
And this is why I started TransPerfect. I saw a need in the industry, but I also thought, if I don't like the culture here, I'm going to build my own culture and make it the best culture out there. That was the idea. That was the goal. And that's what I highly encourage anyone to do who's not loving their situation, because we have systemic issues in this country,
Mm-hmm.
whether, not enough women on boards, not enough women in C-level positions, not enough women in senior management. And then, of course, we don't even have required paid maternal leave, family leave. So go and create that at your own company.
That's right.
And you don't have to have a brand new idea that's never been done. You can do it, simply by doing something better. And that's what led me to start TransPerfect.
And it wasn't easy in the beginning.
Oh,
You were having to make thousands of cold calls through the phone book. You were staying in a dorm and there were roaches.
yeah.
But something in you, like, you didn't quit.
No. And I will say I couldn't quit because I needed to be able to pay the bills. And we were coming out of a recession. A recession was still going on. It would have been hard to find a new job. And also, I didn't know what I wanted to do more. I knew I had loved the translation industry. I thought it's just a case of sticking with this and not quitting. And that's what I encourage everyone to do, because days can be very grim early on when you're starting a company. I mean, I don't think we had our first incoming client call and a project that went along with it until I had made thousands of phone calls and sent out thousands of letters. But just keep with it. Don't quit, because it does pay off. You think, wow, I need to do all that to get one small project. But what happens then is that small project can lead to multiple projects from the same client or from referrals that they make to other clients. And those multiple projects can turn to million-dollar relationships, multi-million-dollar relationships. So even though it can take 6 months or a year to get one project, again, then it explodes after that. And that's why I say in my book, and I say it all the time, the first $1 million is by far the toughest.
And yes, and I do remember you
Yes.
saying that when I heard you speak.
Yes.
So today, there are 13 million women-owned businesses in the United States, accounting for 42% of all companies, per a study by American Express. And this equates to approximately $1.8 trillion per year. I know that there's a lot of women, like you said, that first million is the hardest to get to. So can you share some of those strategies and how that you got there? Because so many women are in that maybe $400,000 range, and it's just so difficult to get to that $1 million. So
Yes. And for us, what we did, and this was in the early 90s, we started in the end of 1992. So back then, what I would do is I would get on the phone and make 300 phone calls a day to different companies, large companies, Fortune 1000 companies, and ask who at the company would have a need for translation services. And then once I got the name of at least one person at the company, I would send a letter out to that person offering our services. Now, that's probably not how it would be done. Now it would be done through perhaps email, a certain number of LinkedIn connections that you're reaching out to. But the point was a high number every day for an extended period of time. And this went on every day until we got to 1 million. But then when we were at 5 million and 10 million and 100 million and 500 million, and I guess the point there is it gets easier to get the business. You don't need to make as many calls or send out as many letters or emails or LinkedIn messages, but you need to stick with it. And then, of course, as you scale your company, it's not just you doing it, you have a team doing it. But it's a case of sticking with it. And I think a few important things for entrepreneurs who are stuck at that level. You don't want to just think, oh, I met the right person, I'm going to be all over them. You do that, of course, and you let them know what you can offer them that no one else can, as far as being more service-oriented, being more innovative, being more as though you're in their business, like working personally for them. You do that, but then you also reach out to many others, because it is a numbers game and you never know who's going to need your services. So don't forget about the volume as you're trying to get to $1 million and beyond. You need the combination. So I think those are important lessons for that. Also, I know so many amazing entrepreneurs who have these great ideas. They're terrific salespeople and they have a great back end to their company, but they are the salesperson, the one salesperson. And that is no good, because how can you scale a company to 10 million or 100 million or 500 million if you are the salesperson? You need to build the sales team under you or alongside you, or however you want to put it. And you need to do that early on. And the key is compensate them the way you would want to be compensated, whereby if they're not successful, they're not making much and you're not paying them much of anything. But if they are successful, they're making more than they would elsewhere. And I talk about that in the book. And I think that's very important. Another thing that women or entrepreneurs can do in this situation is partnerships. Partnerships are great. And I did this early on when we really had not even a little money to spend on draw, like a draw, as far as for salespeople, like a minimum base. One of my earliest clients came through this. Someone said, okay, hi, Liz, I have a client who would have a need for your service. How about They give the work to me and I give it to you. So basically, they take a cut.
Right.
They take a cut.
So like a subcontract.
Yes. So, well, I mean, and the specific example there is remember we would pay our salespeople 10% of revenue, for example, if they got a client. In this case, we would pay the partner 5% for bringing in the business, and they would send it our way as soon as they got it. And that is great because you're only paying if you're selling.
Right.
You're only spending money if you have revenue attached to it. So I think that's incredibly valuable. So work on those partnerships because they're free. So those are a couple of the examples. And I talk about building that world-class sales team, but that is so critical. And that's what we did. And ultimately we had the largest in the industry and we're able to create the largest company in the industry. The other thing I'd say is as far as how you compensate people is when you compensate people, and a lot of, I think, companies do this in not the best way. They'll pay a salesperson a certain amount on the first job or job projects they bring in the first year from a given client, but then the commission goes down. We didn't do that. The commission is the same on that first job from a given client to the 100th job to the 1,000th job. They're still making their same percent, whatever it is, 10%. And that's really important because as we know, it gets a lot easier to get repeat business than it is to get that first project from a client.
That's incredible. So how did you balance? Because, there's so many conferences.
Yes.
And then it's like, if you're at a conference all day long, well, then you're not getting your core work done.
I agree.
And so how do you balance that networking versus, your core?
No, you're right. And that's precisely why you need the sales team. See, I understand people say, well, I can't afford a sales team. I get that. But if you pay them the way I'm talking about, where you pay them as low a draw as they're willing to take. And I remember offering this to someone and I said, okay, this is the draw I can pay. And it wasn't much money. And he said to me, wow, this sounds like such a good opportunity. I don't need any draw. And the reason was we paid a higher commission than other companies would pay. And then they got that, as I said, on the first job for a given client and the 1,000th job for a given client. So the answer is you need other people doing.
Can't do it all yourself.
Right. So you can be out. You can do what you do best. In some people's case, it's out networking, meeting everyone they can. In other people's case, it's being back in the office and just having other people networking for you. But yes, you need a team. You can't do it yourself. You need your dream team. And again, as I keep saying, you need to treat them and compensate them like they are an owner. And that's what we did. The way we scaled to 100 offices, and this is what I haven't really gotten to, but we would say to someone, okay, can you please open the LA office, for example? Okay, we're going to start with you alone in the office. If you sell $50,000 a month for 3 consecutive months, then we can bring in a second person. If the two of you sell $120,000 for 3 consecutive months, we can bring in a third person. And the reason that's so important is we're only adding people if we're bringing in the revenue to pay for it. This is not using other people's money. It's not through funding. So we feel secure that we can pay for this overhead. So that's how we built it to 100 offices. It was literally, one office at a time, and that was how we paid for it. And the other thing we did that I think I mentioned in the book is we acted like we had a boss. I thought to myself, okay, if I had a boss, what kind of plan would I need to give him or her that we're going to have to grow this business? That, okay, that we're going to open one office every quarter. And so then I put that down on paper and we decided to open one office every quarter for a number of years. And we literally put down, San Francisco Q1, Atlanta Q2, Washington, D.C. Q3, Chicago Q4, and then we made ourselves do it. And the way we did it was just one person in that office, and it was a very cost-effective office. Back then, it was executive suites. Now, it would probably be working from home because that's what people do. But if you're just doing it in a very cost-effective way, you can do it, and you can afford it, and you require yourself to do it. And then, of course, by acting like you have a boss, that kind of gets you in that mode.
So when the description of that imaginary boss kind of reminds me of vision boards.
Yes.
Every time I go to one of these vision board parties, I can never find anything in the magazine. I mean, it's like frustrating. I'm like, this is a waste of time. There's nothing here because I dream so big.
Wow.
And so I have to write it down. But it's like similar. It's like, okay, at the end of this year, I'm going to do this. And I hold myself accountable for every experience that I have, even meeting you and how you inspired when you said sales, sales, sales. So guess what's on my 2024 list? Like that's going
Sales,
to be my
sales, sales.
focus.
I love that. So a couple things related to that. One of the things I like to say is say it, set it, do it. Like say what your big goal is. So your overall goal, your vision. In our case, it was to create the world's largest translation company. And the reason I decided I wanted to do that is when we started, there were 10,000 translation companies out there, but they were tiny. They were mom and pops, which were fabulous companies, but they were started and run by translators who were so busy translating, they couldn't scale their companies. So I thought, okay, say it. The goal is to build the largest, the world's premier. And then, okay, set goals to get there. And these were revenue goals. And then the actions that we needed to do each day to get to those revenue goals. Don't think of your career in terms of 10, 15, 20 years or that first job out of college or business school in that long-term way. Instead, just think of the next couple of years. What you want to be doing for the next couple of years. And then you'll learn from that, you'll grow from that, you'll have opportunities from that. And in my case, if it hadn't worked out, after 2 years, I could have said, okay, didn't work out, I'll go get another job. But in my case, it did work out. But then you're sort of off the hook for feeling like you're taking such a major risk. It's only a couple years. I think that's how
Oh,
you have to
yeah.
look at it. But back to what I was saying with the goals is say it, set it, do it. So, set the goals and then do it. Hold yourself accountable each and every day. Be tough on yourself. Don't get distracted by all the things in our lives because it's too easy. But that's why another thing I talk about is compartmentalizing. Obviously, we're big believers in dreaming big, but it's not enough just to talk about it. You have to, figure out all the things, to say it, set it, do it, and
Yeah.
then do it
You have to
every
take
day.
action.
Yes, absolutely.
And so what inspired you to write Dream Big and Win?
I wrote Dream Big and Win because it's the book I wished I had had when I started my career, when I was back in my 20s. I wrote it as kind of a beach read, business read. I tried to make it fun, funny, authentic, vulnerable, because I wanted it to be very readable.
And it's
Because
all of those things.
thank you,
You
thank
really
you.
delivered on that.
Well, thank you, because I did, when I was in my 20s, read every business book I could get my hands on, especially once I was starting my company. And what I found is, a lot of them I couldn't relate to.
Yeah. Some
because
of them are boring as hell.
They
And
can
like,
be
you're
so
just like,
boring. They can be so boring. And, they were all, written
and
by.
why? It's like, hey, making money and running a business can also be fun
It
and
can
interesting.
be fun,
It doesn't,
yes. And there are the highs and the lows. And I wanted to understand the entrepreneurs as people too, and what their values were. And I wanted to learn what they did right, but also what they did wrong, so I wouldn't make those mistakes. And so I tried to make it, again, much more, open, authentic, vulnerable, and fun and funny. So that's why I did it, because it's the book I'd wished I'd had. And as I said, I learned so much. I mean, how could I not learn in 26 years of building a company?
So, Liz, you wrote this amazing book and you sold your billion-dollar business. And so now you've started an incredible foundation, the Elizabeth Elting Foundation. Can you tell us what the mission is and how can we support it?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Stacey. So, yes, I started the foundation because I found while I was working, I saw a lot of issues. And by the way, one of the things I say is work today like no one else will, so you can live and give tomorrow like no one else can. And so that's what
Wow.
I try
That's
to
powerful.
do. Thank you. Thank you. So I did work incredibly hard, and so many entrepreneurs do. That's how you build big companies, right? And I think anyone who's successful works incredibly hard. I mean, that's the two go together, hand in hand. But so during those 26 years, it was a lot of hard work. It was a lot of crazy hours. I remember there were times I would say to myself, oh, is this worth it? And I remember we would say that. And then the goal was to do precisely that, work today like no one else would. So in my case, I could live and give tomorrow like no one else could. So I saw a lot of problems along the way with women, how women were treated. Sometimes it was me. Sometimes it was the women at my company and other women I met in business. And then also people from diverse communities, people from marginalized populations, how they were treated. And then I also felt, along with those issues, I'm one of the lucky ones. I was brought up in a good family that valued education and hard work and let me take my risk. And I was able to become successful. So anyway, I know I am one of the fortunate ones. And, as is said, to whom much is given, much is required. And I truly feel that way. I feel like I was born in the right place at the right time to the right family. I had the right experiences and I met the right people. And yes, I worked hard, but it could have been entirely different. I could have been born in a different situation. So I wanted to give back. So that's the reason we started the foundation. And now we focus a lot on women, a lot on people from diverse communities, a lot on entrepreneurs, on education, on health, a lot of different organizations. But again, the mission is helping support and empower women and people from marginalized communities. And it's incredibly rewarding, gratifying, and necessary. So that's why we do it.
So, what are you dreaming bigger about next?
I'm loving my book tour because I get to talk about, what we've talked about, the lessons based on what I did right and what I did wrong. I get to meet amazing people like you, women like you, entrepreneurs like you, and I'm loving every minute of it and I'm learning from you. So I'm dreaming of more of that in 2024. That's my plan. And then beyond that, all I know is I'm going to keep doing the philanthropy. Right now, I'm involved in a lot of different causes. It's about 20 different causes. And I feel like I want to fine tune it a bit,
Mm.
focus a bit more, because I certainly am trying to make an impact everywhere I can, but perhaps I could use a little more focus. So that's just my longer term plan. But right now, I'm just enjoying the moment and sharing my experience, the knowledge, and meeting amazing people like you and getting to learn from fabulous women like you.
Thank you. Well, Liz, I mean, really, we could go on and on and on. I really wish and hope that we can spend more time together. I'm so grateful for you being here today and saying yes.
Oh,
And
so am
I
I.
want to learn so much from you and your experiences. I've already learned a lot from your book, but I hope to that we can stay in touch and stay connected, and that you'll, still be a part of my life.
Oh, absolutely. I would love that, Stacy. Yes. Thank you so much again for having me. I've loved the experience. I've been honored. I am honored. And yes, just thank you so incredibly much.
Thank you. So go out and get this book. It is life-changing, especially if you are a woman entrepreneur, if you're a corporate professional, if you're a student. This is such a great read to help you prepare and have know tips and strategies for having a successful business.